Feel free to do the same if you're in your outputs. We'll give people a couple of minutes, and then we'll get started sort of promptly. Today's talk should be pretty fun. We're going to be experimenting with using some artificial intelligence, and we're also going to do some practicing with Figjam. But essentially, we'll get going. But let people give a couple of minutes. We'll get started right at like whatever 10:02, just to let people sort of come in. There was, I think, like 115 people had signed up, so hopefully we get that number of humans. Let's see if they don't, but if not, ooh, London, nice. It's in the evening over there. I work with a woman in Ireland. Glad you could all join. This, as I was saying, this should be pretty fun. We're going to be doing some exercises. I'll give a short talk that takes around 10 minutes, and then I'll sort of get into the outputs. And here I can sort of go to my agenda screen. If you want to view this prototype, this presentation here, I'll copy the link. Anyone? Save, can view, copy. Okay. If you want to follow along on your own, in your own space, we'll do that. And then when we get to the appropriate portion, I'll be sharing a Figjam file as well. And if you haven't done so already, we're also going to be using Visual Electric as our sample. So go to Visual Electric, and if you don't have an account, just go create one. This will sort of speed you up. So we'll do that. So Missouri, Denver, Brooklyn, London, San Antonio. Good. We got a good middle of the country. I'm in Los Angeles. Let's see if anybody else is sort of coming. Baltimore, Atlanta. Nice. We're East Coast. All right. Hello from Texas. I think everybody's sort of getting into here. As I was mentioning, let me just get into the agenda for today. I can sort of see some comments in the chat, so feel free to chime in there if you need. But hopefully that's not too necessary. But essentially, what today's talk is going to be sort of and workshop is sort of made up of is I'll tell you a little bit about myself, where they're going to talk about starting away from the computer in your design and development process. We'll then jump into a Figjam activity where everyone also gets some practice, hands-on practice drawing in that space on a prompt, and then we'll use AI, Visual Electric, to sort of help us improve or extend that. These are relatively quick exercises, but they should sort of fun to see what people produce. So with that, at 10:03, let's get started. I don't know if there's a way to, if you want to raise your hand or if you want to get thumbs up, there's ways to do that, and I think I can pay attention. But the goal of this is a conversation, but I may talk a little bit over the top of that, and then we'll get going. So welcome everyone. Hi, I am your guide for today's workshop. My name is Chris Becker. I am a product designer, educator, and author. I've been working with Designlab for a little over 2 years, and I'm currently working on a short course for them on usability and accessibility. I'll sort of highlight that later. My background is in graphic design with a master's degree in media design from the Art Center College of Design here in Pasadena, in California, if you're not familiar. And I've been teaching and sort of working in this space for a long time. And this sort of stuff is fascinating to me, and I'm hoping that you'll find it just as fascinating. So obviously the tools we use move pretty fast, and our job as designers is to practice it. If you'd like to follow me, as I said, I've written a book called Learn Human Computer Interaction. It's on Amazon. I also write on design, UX, Design CC, and some other blogs. and I also am a mentor on ADP list. And then also with Designlab, as you guys all know. My current project with Designlab is a short course on advanced usability and accessibility. It launched this week, and we're nearly done with it. So I'm pretty excited to get this into the whatever canon of stuff that you can continue to learn about. If you're interested, reach out, and there should be another outputs. So let's get into the sort of bulk of the talk. I'm here to sort of advocate that it's really important to start away from your computer. This is sort of based on an article I wrote a while back in Medium, but it's sort of been adapted and sort of morphed as we sort of talk about using sketching tools, which is part of our process, and AI can assist in that as well. So I'm going to ask a question. Who here likes to doodle or sketch or draw? And you can just write in the chat if that's sort of something you're interested in. Love it. Me, I do. Yeah. Oh, it's not your forte. That's fine. Yep. Thumbs up. Great. Okay. Now, at some level, at some conceptual level, drawing is essentially what we're doing, right? Whether it's manipulating pixels or communicating visually, it's all sort of realmed in a relationship to drawing. And the more we sort of practice some of these things, none of us are good at drawing at first, but we have to sort of practice it. Here is an example of if any of you ever played the game Exquisite Corpse. I have a 5-year-old and we're starting to play these games at home, but essentially it's a storytelling narrative of like you draw the head and you pass it to another user, they draw the body, and then the third user has the foot, but none of them know what was above and below, and it results in a sort of interesting outcome. Now, part of the role, which we're going to be talking about in sketching and drawing, is that it can be collaborative, and it can be a really great way to communicate your ideas pretty quickly. One of my favorite quotes is from the famous architect Le Corbusier. I prefer drawing to talking. Drawing is faster and it leaves less room for lies. And he was sort of well known and famous for his drawings, including things like the modular man, which sort of talks about, in architecture there's a human body relationship, and his sketches were sort of very distinct in that way to sort of consider how they do that. And he gave lectures and outputs about how the architect has to think, and designer as a larger outputs, think about the world through drawing, and fundamentally that allows you to do some thinking, right? Like, how does the space work? How does the body move through the space? What does that sort of equal? And there's some really great books and writing and sort of capturing of some of those lectures and outputs that he was able to do. Now, the role of drawing as a whole is a pencil and a paper are really fast thinking tools. And they are, that's what they are. They are thinking tools. And one of the things that we can sort of relate to or sort of give more credence to them is that, like, they aren't easy to learn. They actually take a lot of motor skill and outputs, but we do it at such a young age that it sort of translates into this output. But the relationship of how to speed up your motor skills and do that is actually a function of writing and of drawing. And I like to say that if you can write, you can draw, right? Because fundamentally, writing a letter to communicate an output is related to or connected to that sort of motor skill. You just need to practice. And the relationship of drawing sort of gets sort of confused because many people think it's realistic rendering, and realistic rendering is a thing to do, but it can be a specialized skill. I have artist friends and designers who are like they practice all the time, but they can render what they see really well. And I went to art school. I can sort of draw well, but I then meet other people that can render way better than me. But I do know that where drawing as a whole becomes really fast for thinking is that it doesn't have to be rendered to the real world. It can be stick figures or outputs, and you can get a lot of things across with a circle, a square, and some lines, right? Like these little things that like represent emotion or so human outputs. And the role of thinking takes some practice. Now, one of the things that we're sort of important about the dominance of our tools is that we sort of lean into them. Now, thinking and drawing are an important aspect, but they're also we make for stuff, right? Screens, interfaces, and that is a dominant force in our world, which means that we sort of build tools and structures around making for those things, which is not a bad or fundamentally wrong. It just is this idea of be mindful of what you're making for. If you start away from the screen, it may help you actually execute the screen or the ideas in them or test them even faster. Now, there's lots of opportunities in our space for thinking about how our systems work, and drawing can be a way to sort of navigate or articulate some of those paradigms. So this is an article I wrote a while back about the types of things that humans can do, and how we sort of respond to that. But all of them can be sort of responded through drawing, right? The computer has a paradigm at first of a mouse and a keyboard, and now we have a touch screen, and now we have VR and AR, and now we have these other things. All of them expand on this relationship of what it means to do that. And one of the sort of fascinating and interesting things is how quickly the pencil as an interface for manipulating and guiding the world still is relevant. Now, I am a huge advocate that drawing is thinking, and therefore you should show your sketches in your process. And the sketches are what sometimes can matter. The ideas aren't fully baked in the design process. They start as kernels and then get iterated or modified or changed over time. And as designers, one of the things that I think is really important is that it's a little bit messy. You don't know, you haven't figured it all out. And to try and think that you can figure it all out at first is sort of a fool's errand. But the reality is you can draw it really quickly, and then you can say, hey, where does this go? Or hey, what is this going to be? Here's an example of some sketches that I did with a PM that I was working with, where we didn't know what it was going to be. We sat down quickly in an hour session, drew it out in Figjam, sort of stubbed out like what are the requirements, which we sort of, if you're familiar with doing this with outputs, this results in potentially interfaces that get created and have outputs. Now, sketching is really sort of broadly applicable skill. If any of you are familiar with the designer Michael Beirut, he is a principal over at Pentagram. Sorry, they're a branding agency out of New York City, sort of well known for the New York Times logo and all that stuff. But he made a commitment to draw in these composition books. And there's a really fascinating sort of, you can follow this article. He did a whole exhibition, but he has just stacks of them. When he finishes a sketchbook, he does that. And I've actually committed to using sketchbooks myself. And I use a like moleskin. And I like have whatever. I always carry these things around with me because we never know when ideas strike. But to be able to draw quickly in these things can actually translate into this really interesting way at which it produces outcomes, produces a screen, produces a brand or whatever that is. Now, one of the things that is important about drawing is that it's the beginning. The idea on a piece of paper is not precious. It can be thrown away, it can be modified, it can be dealt with faster. And sketching forces the designer to iterate fundamentally by its material, and whether it's on a whiteboard or output, it is in itself ephemeral, right? And ephemeral idea is like it can be thrown away. Like what's nice about a piece of paper or a notebook or a post-it note or whatever is that if it sucks, you throw it away, or you modify it, or you tear it, or you could do it. And making things tangible is a really quick way to sort of identify and solve the problems in meaningful ways. Now, working with teams, being collaborative, sketching together can be really fascinating, and it also is a really helpful way to sort of navigate what you're thinking about, what it looks like, how it's going to be designed, what number of screens you're responsible for, et cetera, et cetera. Another thing that's good about sketching is it's fast. If you practice, you can produce things really quickly. And in being able to produce them fast, you can then work on identifying the right solutions through the right means. Now, there's a number of great books on this process. I highly recommend every UX designer read Bill Buxton's book, Sketching User Experiences. It's a little older, but he is the sort of writes really eloquently about the idea of iterating on ideas and sketching as a core component of sort of getting to the right solutions faster. And his ideas are starting to like propagate at Microsoft and other places where he sort of spent most of his career. And then there's also, we got to communicate. The Presto sketching is really about like, how do you illustrate or demonstrate what you're trying to get across? And most of drawing can be helpful in this idea of presenting and communicating ideas, not just a screen, but the context in which that screen lives, or the outputs of which is sort of there. So I encourage you to pick up these books, continue to practice, and we're going to do some practicing ourselves. So let's let me share this. Anyone can edit. I'm going to start an open session. Okay, I am going to share this Figjam file, and I'd like everyone to kind of sort of jump in here, and we're going to do a quick exercise. As I see people jumping in here, 7 people. You can join me over here, and I can say like, hey, come join me. Follow me. Spotlight me. Okay. Jump in here. You should have access if you've never used Figjam before. It's a open sort of platform for sort of making notes and writing stuff. And we're going to do a quick exercise in drawing something in our space. So what I wanted everyone to do is we're going to spend around, what time is it now? Okay, we're going to spend around 10 minutes. I'll set a 10-minute timer. And what we're going to do is I want you to grab a rectangle over here. Some of them are pre-built. Copy a rectangle to us and drag it down into your space, wherever you need. One of the goals is of the Figma rules. I'm just going to go over this as your own. 1, respect your other's workspace. Use your own stuff. Don't delete or edit anything that isn't yours. You know, be an adult and stay appropriate, and let's keep on task, right? So let's like not roam around, but essentially grab yourself an output. And then what I also want you to do is I want you to grab out a sticky note, and in the sticky note, make sure that you have show and hide author selected on, and that'll show like your name or who's there. If you're here anonymously, I don't know why you would be, but and then in here, add your location. So I'm in Los Angeles, California. And I realize that I'm doing this on Mitch's screen, so but you get my point. As I've done over here, you can see I've added my location and name, and I can show where I am. And then this can be grouped with your background, and you can group those things together or ungroup. And I can edit group, object, group. This will be helpful later, and we'll group again our drawing that's in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on a timer, and what I want everyone to do, oh, I don't know why this prompt is a futuristic wearable interface. Okay. Now, if you haven't drawn in Figjam that often, it's sort of useful to just grab out the black. You can use a different size and outputs. You can use some color and things if you want, but start with sort of rudimentary shapes and outputs. You can use shapes and things as you need. Draw however you want, but we're essentially going to spend 10 minutes drawing out a futuristic wearable user interface, whatever you think that could be. And I'm going to start a timer. 10 minutes. We can put on some lo-fi hip hop while we're doing this. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear this or not, but maybe. And let's start the timer. If you have any questions, you can add them into the chat, and I can sort of do that. And if you also have questions, you can at me in the comments. You can be like, hey, at Chris Becker. if you needed. But we don't need to do that. And I believe you can also do this. Oh, do you guys also know this move? If you hit backslash, you can type something like, hey, how are you? Hey, what about this? Okay. All right. So let's get going. I'm going to put on some ambient music. If you have any questions, you can keep going. I obviously started drawing beforehand. So get some drawing going. Oh, Lydia. Yup. It's a weird shoe down there. Good. Okay. Everybody getting close. Ooh, a weird salamander. Some sort of necklace. Okay, it spreads out. A wearable thing. Good. I'm just gonna delete one of them. These people don't need them. Okay, rings. The last 5 minutes. Ooh, nice. Goes back in space. Good. Okay. There, I'm gonna pause the music for a second. Okay, with the last 4 minutes, if your drawing is getting pretty close, and what I want us also to do is add a short little description of what you've drawn, right? Like how this thing works. So for example, mine is and I'm gonna grab out my type tool, and I'm just gonna add some type here. And mine is a holographic display from the hand, and this is ginormous for some reason. Just make it extra large. A holographic display from the hand of the user, used to project news through a scalable size or something. Or refine this a little later, but I just want some level of like, what is your concept of a wearable device? Mine is, it's not wearable at all. It just sort of pops out of your hand. But yours could be different. Like I see one down here, like it's a whole sleeve. Cool. Snaps onto the whole body. This is a pirate eye patch. I'm curious what you think this one's called. I like the weird disc metal. Okay. Ooh. Awesome. Okay. So with the last minute and a half, just wrap up a little description about how this works, what you're sort of seeing, and then we'll review a few of these really quickly, and then we'll dive into a few options. Okay. Perfect. A smart scarf. Good. Heads up display. Good. Digital glasses. A wearable headband. Okay. Good. Good. AR glasses. Future. I'm good. Okay. I think everyone's getting close. Just take a quick view around other people's. If you want to leave some, you can go get people's stamps. Like if you think one's really rad, like, oh yeah, this one's a fascinating heart. I'm gonna give you a heart over here, and I'll stop this in timer. Okay, I think everyone has gotten something of an interface going with a short description. Yeah, finish up your description if you need it. Roam around and see what people are doing. This one is to be worn at different ankle interface, cool. That's great. Jewelry, regulates body temperature. There's a scarf. There's a whole sleeve. This one I think is fire. And you can, if you want to just give some fire, you can be like, yeah, fire. And you also can give high fives if you somebody give me a high five over here. So, somebody give me a high five. Wiggle your hand back and forth, and you can give me a high five. Yeah. Here we go. High fives. Boom. Do it. Get it. Yeah. Okay. High fives. Whatever. Some weird fun things that this can do. Okay. So let's look at these, review them pretty quickly. And now, let me ask a question. Does anybody love their drawing? Their 10-minute output? I think it's amazing. They're like, this is the best drawing I've ever made in my whole life. Kelly's like, no. It's laughing. Nope. Now, again, it's a sketch. Some of these are getting the idea. Some of them are using color to get ideas across. They've sort of translated concepts. Even rudimentary things like, I can see it's a headband. I don't know more about the interface, but maybe it could be described. I can sort of say like, oh, like I'm sitting on a bench. I can sort of see that this thing is not on his wrist, but maybe floating in the space, and that can sort of help us. Now, if you were to spend more time drawing this with more detail, you probably would get more complexity or more rendering out of it. But that's not the end goal. What we're going to do next is we're now going to go use artificial intelligence to help us render or ideate these ideas. So if you are not familiar with Visual Electric, go there and open a new canvas. Hopefully you've created an account already, and I'll put the URL in here. There's some free stuff that you get. This is why we're using it. There's a number of other. It doesn't really matter to me what AI you use. If you are familiar with a different one, or you want to use something that's different than the Visual Electric, I recommend Visual Electric just because there's lots of options and you can sort of do this relatively quickly. But what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next 10 minutes redrawing our. We're going to make any iterations or changes to our vision. You could even copy and paste this if you want, or you could redraw it in Visual Electric. And then, like I've done here, and then you're going to add a short description about what you want this to be. So I started it with a male as a description, and then the most recent one I did before this was a holographic outputs, and you can choose your rendering style. So this is like Supertron-esque, associated under my short-haired woman using a holographic display, and it sort of uses this as a starting place. So the AI relies on the sketch and the description. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set another 10-minute timer, and I want everyone to come into Visual Electric, redraw their version, make any iterations you want to your sketch if you need to, and then update that. Before you go, actually, I want everyone to sort of come in there and group your objects. So select it all and go object group selection, or you can hit Apple G. That just makes life easier for moving these things around later. I need to ungroup those and then regroup just these pieces. And then I'm going to group this. This makes for moving this around later easier. And you can see, Drew, you put this in front of your thing. And you can move this to the back if you need. Okay. Is everybody clear? Any questions? So what we're going to do is we're going to take the concept of what we've drawn here, the basics of this arm thing or your glasses, and we're going to port it over into Visual Electric. You can redraw it yourself with your pen tool, like, oh, I need to redraw my headband or my eyeglass thing or my arm. You can also port in an image, but the goal is to make any iterations to your drawing that you didn't maybe capture here or that you got close to, you want to sort of modify or make a little bit more clear, and then put it into your artificial intelligence, draw quick outputs, and then add a short description and render out a version. There's lots of options in how you can sort of render this from fine art and art nouveau and outputs, and it's up to you to sort of make a choice on those things. It renders out pretty quickly, but I'm going to start a timer and we'll get going. If you have any questions, holler at me in the chat. Cool. Cool. Okay. As an example, I'll draw with you guys as a way to improve my drawing. So you can see mine up here, sitting on a park bench. But I'm gonna maybe do it from the this is sort of over the shoulder, and I'll do a different drawing. Boop. Shoulder, arm, hand. Just making sure. Oh, Andrew, good. You can copy a PNG and it'll drag that in there. I'm advocating for iterating your drawing, but either or, right? How that sort of functions for you. But okay, I get close. Her hair is a little long, but that's fine. I'm gonna delete it. And fixed some hair. We're gonna do a ponytail. Boop. My art school days of making humans proportions wrong is holding true in my sketches, but that's all right. Sitting on a park bench using a output. Okay. So now I'm going to just re-render this. A woman, a 22-year-old woman. Train station. Okay. Maybe it's a 22-year-old woman using a holographic. Maybe I can make this a map, right? Like, where do I go? Sitting at a in profile. Okay, and then I can choose a different rendering style. So once you get your drawing close and you've added your description, obviously the more description you can get about your space, what your thing is that they're going to be doing. Map user interface. And I have a render. I can then update this. So I'm going to use concept art, and then I can hit render. Can I render this? Render it. Let's see if it renders it. I may have used up my free aspects in this board, but hopefully not. Oh, no, here we go. So it takes a little bit, takes a second. So we have a couple minutes left. So if you haven't done so yet, get your thing rendered. And I'm gonna stop the music for the last 2 minutes just so we can do this. It'll start to render this stuff out in the style you've chosen, whether it's close or what you want. And what I want us to do is I want us to just grab a screenshot, or you can also copy and paste these out of your outputs, screenshot or copy and paste. And I want us to drag these and add them back into our outputs. So, and we're going to place them over here in this right rendering sketch. So maybe bring over your whole drawing. So for example, the scarf one, I'm gonna just copy this all the way over here. Oh, and I want your render in there as well. So I'm gonna group that. Oops. Group. I'm gonna copy and paste this all the way over here. Just drag it over. Oh, I missed your name too, but that's okay. Add your name as a upwards, but I'm going to show you here. Take this whole thing and copy and paste it over here. And then also add your copied out of so this is continuing to render. I'm going to wait for it for a second to do that. But I'm going to capture this plus your prompt and add it to your next to your drawing. Did that make sense? Okay, so I'll let people get their renders in here. This is a little slower than it was in the past, but I imagine we're running up into prime rendering time for Visual Electric. And it's a free tool, so I can't really complain about how much that renders or doesn't render. Okay, I'm going to grab these for now, and that last one may come back out. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come drag it into my space over here. And copy. And I'm going to paste the prompt in here as well. And then group these together. Group. Okay. Here are mine. And I'm just going to group all three of these together just so I can move them as needed. And I want you guys to do the same. All right, let's see what it did. Oh, all right. Glowing. Ooh, this one's weird. And look at how big the watch is. And there's a weird hand in there. It's fine. Big ass watch with a necklace. Good. Interesting. And here, from those glasses, we got these glasses. Whoa, interesting. It rendered them as cartoon shoes. Good. Let's see down here. Ooh, look at these weird watches on an arm. That's hard to tell what it is. Fascinating. Okay. Yeah, if your renders are to the left over here, just make sure to drag them over here to the right, just so we keep the original drawings we had plus the stuff that we had to the right. But that can help. I can drag some people's stuff over as well. Or copy and paste. I'm gonna group this and copy and paste over here. This is just more for presentation and relationship purposes, but good. And here's one. I'm also gonna group, copy and paste over here. Okay. So we'll take about 5 minutes just to sort of review some of these. Take a look. If you have, get out your stamp tool. You can have like stars or thumbs up or plus ones, or if you have questions, you're like, I wonder what, like, how that rendered it or what you were sort of looking to do. I think things like, oh, it sort of has LEDs on the shoe. I get as a wearable interface. Some of them are more accurate than others. Like this one, this seems pretty close to your drawing. Look at the hair. They even got the hair. Maybe not the projection, but an interesting render. Okay. Ooh, got the hair. I'll just put some hearts on there. And if there was any others, oh, here's a a clip breathing nose device that is now a mask that goes into his shirt. This feels, it's a cartoon, but it feels very dark. But I'm gonna give that some fire. He's got a mask. It's not gonna hurt him. Good. Some renders of watches. Like look at her. Well, you can start to tell things that are bad in AI, like hands. Look at this hand. It's like all jacked. Fingers, sometimes faces are a little weird, but it starts to get devices and things somewhat, even though this is massive compared to her hand. But it's sort of an interesting execution. And you can see many of you have chosen very different rendering styles, whether it's a photographic outputs versus like futuristic drawing, or I rendered one over here. I think that was like, oh, I didn't copy that one over yet. I did one that was like Tron. So I'm gonna add that to mine over here as well. These are more like Tron. So good. Let's see. Oh, this one's weird. It's like glowing chest bit. Star wipe. Fascinating. From the back, from the front. Include your prompt, just because I want to see who is this, Valerie? Or yeah, Valerie. Add your prompt from from Visual Electric. I want to just see how you described it. Oh, is it there? Okay. So you can see here, like for example, a person wearing, because you're not like if you were more descriptive about who the person was, it might be able to sort of render maybe more accurately or more specific. Like the AIs are interesting and they sort of speed us up, but you have to also tell them what you want. You have to be specific, and that can help sort of align to how it understands your drawing, but also then renders the things that are around it. Like if you didn't tell it a space, so it sort of put them in a field or like behind a wall or whatever that is, and that can be helpful. And I think I was trying to get mine to like render her in a futuristic train station, and you can sort of see like, oh, okay, it sort of puts maps back there. Here they missed the interface completely. Same here. Like this is the only one where it rendered like the interface in her hand. So you're like, oh, it didn't really do what I wanted, but it came close. But in others, it sort of, because I described it as an interface, it was more specific. If that makes sense. Yeah, roam around. What I'm going to jump back into our presentation for the last 6 minutes, and if you have any questions, we can sort of do that. Drop your outputs in the chat if you have them. Like here's one, like how do we ask Visual Electric to reference the sketch instead of the descriptions? I don't know how I don't know how to tune it necessarily, but it will take cues from your sketch that like associate itself. So like, for example, mine is in profile because I told it in profile, but I've drawn it in profile and she's sitting. This wouldn't render a sitting person if I hadn't drawn the sitting person, because I didn't tell it that the person's sitting. Does that make sense? So it's sort of a combination, and this is what makes using tools like Visual Electric really sort of fascinating, is that it's not just a combination of just the description or just the drawing. It is uses both, and the better you can render, the better you can draw, and then it sort of executes a more interesting aspect. Like, I don't know, here's one that's like almost exactly like what you're trying to show to some extent, but with different proportions, which is sort of fascinating. Um, what are my thoughts on using these renderings in a case study? Be explicit about the tools you use. This is an AI has rendered these things for you, and if you showed where it started and where it ended up, that is part of a design process, right? If it helped you think about a solution or consider a different thing, just don't try and pass this off like you rendered this thing, because you didn't. Um, be explicit about the AI tools you used and what and how you got to this prompt, and that's the design work. So that's why we're sort of experimenting with them, right? Just like we can render things pretty quickly, but the speed you can get to ideating or generating things that I can't draw like this or like take photographs of people. I don't know how to render this, but I can describe in a sketch pretty quickly and then produce things that sort of align to that. If I was using this in my portfolio, I would include this cycle. Here's how it started. Here's where I used Visual Electric in a 10-minute prompt to do this. And here's the executions it created. And then that sort of translates to that. Obviously, the more you practice this with, the better you might get to where you need to go. And again, your AI is there to speed you up, but it also is a reflection. Like, is this a good idea? I don't know. Can the computer render it? Are they able to communicate what you're doing? The faster you sort of work on the speed of these, and again, we spent 10 minutes sketching in Figjam, and we spent another 10 minutes letting a computer render it. Is that speed the only thing you're going to present? Maybe not, but there's that opportunity to sort of do it as part of your process, right? Speed up your ideation cycle, and that ideation cycle then allows you to translate that. And one of the things that designers we need to sort of be mindful of is that the computer, AI, needs a creative. It needs somebody to direct it. And if you aren't practicing how to direct an AI correctly or towards a better solution, it will create bad outcomes. It just will. And because it doesn't have a soul, it doesn't know what's solving. It is waiting for us to inform it. And the better we can inform it, the better that can speed up our cycle. And then also this sort of weirdly generates stuff that are sort of weird. Like, I love the ones where it's like not what you expected. Because anyone does anybody get something really weird? Like the hands are there, but where it just didn't render what you wanted. Like here, look at this. This is weird. I don't know what this is. And it's based on a car. You know what I mean? And you can render it in so many different ways, it's gonna translate. I don't know if that was what you were looking for. This is maybe a little closer. But that's sort of the fun to some extent. Now, with the last, whatever, we could spend the last 2 minutes sort of chatting, and I'm willing to stay a little bit longer if people want it. But in the end, what makes these things really fascinating is that they're fast. They help you render ideas that you like. If you don't love to draw and you can't draw that well, look, I can take a whatever stick figure concept and turn it into things that I don't know if I would be able to render it any other way, right? And if you can tell stories with these side of tools and sort of communicate with your clients, here's how it works, here's how's it going, and you can do that at speed and pace. There is some argument that it's eliminating some other artist jobs, but there is also that idea that it's already happening. So not that you have to get in line, but if we practice with these tools and we see how to use them effectively, then we can bring them to industry and make sure that they're not whatever ripping everyone off for taking them. And I wouldn't say that it's a balance. Practicing with these tools allows you to show that you know how to be effective with them. And these are not the only ones as well. Like there's chat. You could put your prompt into Chat GPT, and like it all sort of feeds on itself. But there's this opportunity to do that. Peng, you're asking what my set of tools are. I mean, I have used ChatGPT, Dolly. I've experimented with a lot of these. Visual Electric, I think is good, obviously for things like this. I like that you can sketch and it produces an outcome. There was one that I did this with before. It was called Scribble Diffusion. All these sort of large sort of visual language models that sort of funnel into ideas are sort of fascinating. And this one and Visual Electric in particular is sort of fascinating in the options of rendering styles that you can sort of get out of a similar idea. So yeah, I use this along with stuff that's happened inside of Figma and those outputs. Are there questions you should go through before deciding on any image that an AI gives us? Again, that's a great question. I'm sure there are. Yeah. So the short of it is yes. Like you're looking for a level of quality. You're looking for it to communicate a certain outputs, and it still requires you as a designer who has empathy for your end user and what problem you're solving to sort of filter that. You know, lots of these AIs will sometimes render things that are inaccurate or borderline racist. And if we just plug that in and move it through the system, well, there's the problem, right? Is that there isn't scrutiny given to the way in which it's actually executing the outputs. And that's our job, right? And there is a lot of bias in these tools. There's no doubt about it. And the sort of ethical quandary that we find ourselves in a lot of times is, well, what did it give us? And why is that valuable? And sometimes even helping tune these things, you know, that potentially is a future job. Like you could be a designer at an AI tool company tuning their outcomes or whatever. I have no idea, but yeah. Yeah, well, and yeah, Emil, you're right. Like there's a whole sort of practice. What I find sort of fascinating as well in as you started writing the prompt, it would fill in things that it wants to do with you, right? Like it starts to help you, like here's what we could do better, or like, right, you like type in futuristic and it's like busy Tokyo landscape. Like that's because it has that in the background, right? It knows it can render that stuff faster, if that makes sense. So we've obviously run over a little bit long. If you have questions, reach out to me on social media. Hopefully this was fun, and the outcomes that you guys produced here are really great. So I look forward to chatting with you guys soon, and have a great rest of your day. Yep, thank you. I'm gonna stop the recording.